can get the recording out of there and we can get it posted.
Yeah, you bet. Well, as that starts, you know, and as I'm fumbling a little bit in Mars's absence, this first of our regular biweekly sprint reviews, after he's moved on to SIT services, and a really interesting file working on the expansion of the connectivity initiative. So good on Mars. But of course, we do as we're doing and pulling together to fill gaps. And as we get rolling, you know, speaking of pulling together, looking forward to hearing not only from Team Osprey, our BC Parks digital delivery team, but also hearing from our info services and res services team, an update on what they've been up to the last, you know, with air quotes this time, we'll call it sprint, but the last increment, and working towards this connected fashion of working in those time boxed increments, which I hope that we all find, you know, are beneficial in terms of the effectivity of our delivery, but also just, you know, mental health as well, and working in those smaller increments, because sometimes around here it can certainly feel like, well, there's never a shortage to do, but it can feel overwhelming, the full mass of stuff that we have to do. And we set an intention to open the tent with these sprint reviews. Some coordination challenges have meant that we don't have our park operator cohort with us today, but we are recording, and we'll send this out to that group. So anybody who chooses to watch later on, welcome to this part of our practice. And before we roll on, I would like to acknowledge, you know, as we always do and as we always should, given that the work that we do in the BC Parks Agency and as a team of teams is grounded in the land, and is across the land of what we now call British Columbia. And so I'd like to acknowledge that this morning, as is a regular practice for me, I started the day, you know, with the community in a part of the Southern Vancouver Island, traditionally known as Megan, known now as Beacon Hill Park, and I'm just a little ways from there, still within the traditional territory of Lekwungen speaking people. And so as we ground in this place, wherever we happen to be, and give thanks for it and the work that we're privileged to do, wanted to extend that gratitude to this group, around this group and around the province. So thanks for being here and leaning into our shared mission. So with that set up, Jess, as PO of Team Osprey, our digital delivery team, do you want to set us up? And for those who, you know, happen to watch asynchronously, give a sense of what our incremental delivery practice looks and feels like.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to share my screen quickly here. Okay. So as everyone mentioned, our sprint review today is going to be a little different than the last couple ones. So Team Osprey, our development team, is going to do our update, and then Darcy and the reservation services team is going to provide an update, and then Leah and the web and information services is going to provide an update as well. But before we do all that, I did want to just quickly go over what is a sprint review. I'm going to channel my inner Merzad, so we're going to see how this goes. He was nice enough to lend me his slides before he left, so. So a sprint, like Ruben said, is sort of a time-boxed set of time. So we at Osprey do 2 weeks, and I think Leah and Darcy are doing about 2 or 3 weeks as well. And what we do is we do all these activities listed out here. So we're gathering requirements at the beginning of the sprint, we're designing, we're developing, we're testing, we're deploying any new code or any new product into a test or a production environment. And then we're coming back here and showing off kind of what we've done at this sprint review. And then what we do, we just keep doing this over and over again and trying to iterate on kind of what the feedback we heard during this session and over the last 2 weeks. We take that feedback and we add it to our backlog, and then we try to iterate and improve our product over time. But the sprint review, this is really, the goal of this session is really just to get feedback from everybody that's in attendance. So we want to hear questions. We want to hear anything you think about our product. We want to demo what we've done over the last 2 weeks and show you kind of our progress. But please know that this is not the only time for you to provide feedback. You can reach out to myself or anybody from our team and give us feedback during the middle of the sprint as well. So we're kind of always open to that. And moving on to Team Osprey. So our sprints, we're on sprint 14. And as many of you know, we name our sprints after different protected areas in the province. Our last sprint was Noosek Conservancy Sprint. And that is actually in the traditional territory of the Newhulk First Nations, up near sort of Bella Bella area. It's very difficult to find photographs of this conservancy. So I reached out to Sherry, and she was kind enough to show me the folder where all the staff photo contest photos live. So you might notice that kind of sprinkled throughout the presentation. And I did just want to plug it for Sherry in case they run it again this year. I was going through the folders, and there are some amazing photographs of parks in there. So I'm going to start putting them in for our presentations because they're really they need to be shared. So yeah, so this is our burn down chart over the last 2 weeks. You can tell we did quite a bit of this is kind of our process. It went down quite a bit here, and at the end we went up. And I think that's because we'd finished most of the work and we kind of picked up a little bit of work near the end of our sprint. So our last sprint 14 for Team Osprey, our goal was to get all of the attendance and revenue data entry forms working as expected. So I think last sprint review, I wasn't here, but it sounds like there was a demo about the data entry forms, and we've kind of made a lot of improvements on those forms this last sprint. And so we're hoping to show you guys those improvements today. And we did accomplish this goal. So those forms are working as you would have expected, and all the calculations and validations are in there now as well. All right, so we're going to start off with our demo. I'm going to start showing the beginning part of the attendance and revenue system, and then I'm going to pass it off to Cam to show kind of the improvements that were made over this last sprint. So I'm just going to dive into this window here. And I'm going to demo from the test environment. So this attendance and revenue system is created for the use of BC Park staff and park operators. And the hopes is that the park operators will be able to log into this system and track the attendance and revenue data that their park or their campground is collecting over the year. And then with the goal of tracking that over time. So like we're hoping to get historical data in there at some point and being able to track trends from year to year to kind of see how things are changing. But one thing I want to flag first is right now to log into the system is you need to log in with an IDER. So it's kind of restricted just to BC Park staff at this point. Our next sprint, we are going to try to integrate with BC EID and the BC Services card to provide different options for park operators to log into the system. Once they log in, this is going to be the screen that they land on is the enter data. And so I just wanted to kind of run through how this will work. Is the park operator is first going to land on this screen and they're going to select a date, and this is by month. So we haven't done any days in here. As the reports are coming up, it's like a monthly total, not a daily total. So for instance, if I go to January, and then I can search by park name here, has all the parks in here. Please note this is a test environment, so there is a test park. But if I go in here and say I want to look at, let's do like Strathcona, it's going to come up here. And in our database, we're holding the parks as well as all their associated sub areas. So you'll see here, this is the list of sub areas that we were given that are associated to Strathcona Park. One thing we're going to do in our next sprint, hopefully, is get it so that any park operator that has some sub areas within Strathcona Park are only going to be able to see what they're responsible for in this system. So if I'm a park operator for Strathcona Park Della Falls sub area, I'm not going to be able to go in and see like Garibaldi Park, for instance. So I wouldn't see these things in here. But for the purposes of the demo, oh, actually, one more thing I want to mention there is say for Strathcona Park, and I go to Della Falls. The other thing that's done here is the different, what we're calling sort of like categories of attendance and revenue reporting. It's only going to show what's relevant to Della Falls. So Della Falls, it's backcountry camping. So this is going to be the only data that's going to be able to be reported at this sub area. But for instance, if I change that, say to like, let's do Butta Lake, it's going to have front country camping and day use because that's what's available at this sub area. But for purposes of the demo, I'd like to show all of the categories. So I'm going to go to our test area, our test park and our test sub area. And you'll see now that we've got 7 different categories in here. And so these are all the different categories of the data entry forms that we've been creating. we came up with these different forms with through user research that Jane did with the rec services team as well as with park operators. And over the past couple of weeks, I know, Jane, you've had a chance to meet with some park operators and show them the forms and kind of run through some of the usability testing with them, which I understand went pretty well. And that's how these forms were developed. And you'll notice here, if I like front country camping, you'll see it was last updated this morning because I went in here and I put in some fake data so that I could show you during this sprint review. But you'll see these other ones, like this has never been updated. So I could go into front country camping and I could edit this. But one thing I did want to note is that if I go into here, this is sort of that like that view only view of this data. So if I wanted to see just like, I just want to get a quick idea of, oh, okay, let's see how many was the total attendance for second cars or something like that. I can go in here and I can quickly see that. I can quickly see that net revenue or the other front country camping revenue here. So I get that quick look and I can close it up. And I go to front country cabins and say, oh, look, this one's not being filled out yet. I'm going to jump in and edit it. I'm not going to show the edit functionality because I'm going to pass that on to Cam to show. But just wanted to, before I pass it on to Cam, any questions about that piece? All right. Okay, Cam, I'll pass it off to you to show the improvements on those forms.
Okay. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. As Jess was saying, this sprint we kind of focused a bit more on improving the form flow that we demoed last sprint. So there's not a ton of visual updates that we did, but there was a ton that was done that you can't see. So I'm gonna do my best to run through those changes, and I will explain, or I will show them visually where they're visible. So one of the big things that we wanted to focus on the sprint was the separation of our data handling and our visual UI components. And that was in pursuit of improving our site usability in situations where you might not have the best internet connection. So we've constructed some data services that will pull our backend data from our database at very specific times. And that's just to reduce the number of APIs calls we're making to the backend, and therefore reduce the reliance on internet that we have. And then those data services, they put all that data that we pulled into a pool, and any of our visual UI elements can go into that pool and pull the data as needed without having to call our backend. So I will try and demo a bit of that here. If I go into this test bark that Jess was looking at earlier, I hit go there. Right there, we're hitting the back end, and we're going to pull all of the data for that park. So we've got all these forms up here, and they're all populated with stuff that we just pulled from the back end. But now all that data is stored locally, so we don't have to hit the back end again when we go into, say, this front country camping form. We've got some information that we pulled, and when I hit edit, this is probably not going to show up too well for you guys because I have really snappy internet. But it immediately populates all the fields here with all that data, and there was no call to the API during that. So no internet needed there. You can go around here, you can make all the changes you want to the form, and it will only update, it'll only call the API again when we hit save here. So that hit the API, all my changes were saved. Perfect. One thing we improved from last time, if you want to share this page with somebody else, you can copy this URL. I can open a new window. I can paste it in here, and it'll load all that data in. It will call the API because this window, as far as this window is concerned, has never seen any of this data before, but it does populate nicely. One thing we also improved with that, I don't know if you guys can see this, but if I refresh the page, it will disable all of these fields so that you can't enter anything while the API is looking for backend data. Yeah, so these fields are grayed out very briefly there. I don't know if you can see that because Teams has a very impressive 2 frames per second screen sharing rate. But I can assure you that all these fields are disabled whenever we're hitting the back end. So I'm going to go to a form. Oh, we also added this cancel button in the bottom corner here. So if you made any changes, you don't want to save them, you can hit cancel, discard changes, and they'll take you back to this page here. Okay, so to show some of the form calculation stuff we did, I'm going to pick a form that doesn't have a whole lot going on. Backcountry Cabins only has a total people and a net revenue calculation. So if I want to go in and edit here, we can see here that if I want to change this data, anytime I increase or decrease this value, this total is updated on button press. So I can type in something here, it'll automatically update it based on this formula down here. This formula is different for all fields, and it's all set up to calculate whatever that field requires or form requires, except sometimes those formulas will have a multiplier. So this multiplier we actually store in the database, and we pull that down whenever we need it, and we can inject it into these formulas and calculate it however we want. So that's just the total people for backcountry cabins. We can also change net revenue. It'll just update on the fly according to this formula. We also added some field validation in. So you can't enter anything into these fields that our backend will not accept. So you can't really tell. I'll put my mic right up to the keys. I'm spamming letter keys right now. Obviously can't have letters in a number field, so that's not registering in our front end. But all the numbers are coming in as they're supposed to. There are some characters that you can enter in a number field, but are not allowed in the cases of our forms. For example, you can't have a negative quantity. So I could put in the number -9 here and it'll register, but we've got this little UI functionality, the little red border around here that'll give you a heads up that that is not an allowable value. And if I try and hit save with that in there, currently nothing will happen. We're going to improve the feedback on that later, but I can't submit anything that is invalid to the back end. I think that is mostly it. Is there any questions on that stuff, or have I missed anything? No, pass it back to Jess.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest assets of using this system, or benefits of using this system for park operators, will be those automatic calculations and the validation to prevent like data errors or anything like that. So I think having those like automatically show up like that is pretty neat. All right. Okay, so just want to talk about what's next for Team Osprey in regards to both attendance and revenue. And we're also going to be diving back into the day use pass system as well to prepare that for this upcoming summer. So what's next for attendance and revenue and for day use pass is all things identity, roles, and permissions. So like I said, we are going to be integrating with BC EID and BC Services Card to provide both options for the users. And we're gonna hopefully try and accomplish this for both day use pass and attendance and revenue at the same time. So I'm very hopeful that that's going to work out, and we'll be able to demo that next sprint. And then the other thing we're going to be working on is making some day use pass updates that we got from the user research over the past couple of months, and just preparing that for this upcoming summer with the hope of releasing day use passes. I think it was June 15th is the launch date for that. And just quickly showing our roadmap here. So you can see we're here at finishing up sprint 14, still working on the attendance and revenue reporting. So besides the identity piece of attendance and revenue, we're also working on getting the export of that data set up, which I think is probably the most valuable piece of that. And that'd be for BC Park staff to be able to export any data that's being input into that. So hoping to have that prepared in the next couple of weeks here as well. So looking at potentially a June kind of soft launch of that attendance and revenue system, being able to release it to park operators to start inputting data around that time. And then, like I said, the day use pass stuff is coming up with that mid-June launch. I think some of the day use pass work will extend beyond June, so we're going to be doing some iterations after it's released to try to make some improvements that we may not be able to fit in right before June 15th. And then I have added this BC Parks Data Register discovery, which hoping to start kind of once we start wrapping up some of the day use past summer is looking at BC Parks data kind of as a whole and seeing where we can make improvements in consistency and quality with BC Parks data in general, which would include, I saw some chatter here about the sub areas in the parks and things like that. So being able to have sort of that one source of truth, I think would be really valuable for BC Parks. And with that, one other thing I just wanted to flag on the roadmap is that when attendance and revenue and the day use pass systems are operating, we're going to have that operational support needed from our team just in case any major urgent bugs or anything come up. So this is Team Osprey's roadmap for the next couple of months. Ruben?
Just if I can, just embellishing on the data register discovery, and not only, but in particular speaking to Jeff Card here. But you know, those of you who've been around know that, you know, BC Parks had a multi-year capital project, the Open Information Project, tied, you know, significantly to, you know, cleaning up BC Parks data holdings, and tied with that was the content management system project. You know, in respect to that project, you know, there were a number of challenges in respect to the data side of things. You know, we have a beautiful UI at beta.bcparks.ca, and the team's working really hard, you know, take the data and express it, you know, across the board in that UI. But you know, Jeff and others, I think we'd all agree there's more work that we can do in our data domain, and especially if we, you know, look to a long-term vision of all of our digital products, you know, having, you know, a seamless user experience, so that folks can truly go from, you know, discovery, you know, online, you know, choosing and finding their own adventure, you know, through the information platform and into the reservation platform. You know, there's work for us to do in the data. So, you know, that is in service of all of our teams and all of our products. So that's what's going on there, and it is tied to the fact that the BC government has just released a data plan, you know, corporately. The ED responsible for that is a, you know, a longtime friend, and we've talked about the idea of, you know, trying to be, you know, partners with them in early adopters of that plan, an expression of you know, codified data registers, you know, that are trusted, you know, tied to findable APIs, and serve the integration of our products, and also make, you know, more possible the notion of parks as a platform as well. So that's why we're seeing high value in that as a future focus. Thanks, Jess.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to pass it off now to Darcy and show off another great photo.
Thank you so much, Jess. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And my computer has, of course, been extremely slow this morning. So if anyone is having issues, please do let me know, but you should be able to see it here now. So for anyone that I haven't met, my name is Darcy Meyer, and I'm the acting manager of the reservation services team, sort of acting in the product owner role as well. So our team is introducing more agility into our work, and we're really excited to be here and present a bit of an update. So basically, in post-launch of camping.bcparks.ca, introducing more agility into our work, we undertook a bit of an experimental sprint, what we're calling Sprint Zero, that ran from April 14th to today, May 4th. So we spent the last 3 weeks trying to set up our Jira board, introduce more collaboration with Camus and their cycles, and get on the same cycle as what the Osprey team is doing. So really excited to share an update today, but there will be more to come as we move forward. So I wanted to give a bit of an overview of what we were able to accomplish during this experimental sprint. And we have sort of 3 emerging streams of work within reservation services, so I'm going to speak to those 3. So on the operations front, we just did a ton of work with prioritization and ticketing with Camus. And so we have a number of priorities that are constantly coming through to our team, as well. Camus has, their capacity and workflow, and we're constantly trying to bring those closer together. So we did a prioritization exercise that we shared with Camus and got into really good track that I'm going to share a little bit more about later. We also did a bunch of work around process improvement with the Camus call center, which is excellent. So Jessica on the reservation services team was able to really take that on and improve that process. So we're in really good shape going into the season. We also have a very busy inbox with Discover Camping at gov.bc.ca. And so as a team, we were able to take some time post-launch to sort of improve our management and workflow around that so that we're being a little bit more proactive in how we manage the heavy flow of information coming in through that inbox on a daily basis. Moving away from operations onto the policy side of our work, we're working through a policy and procedures manual update for 2022. So this is something that reservation services does on an annual basis. And we're working closely with recreation services on that as well. So that's currently in the works. We also have a number of policy sort of needs emerging outside of this regular update that we do. So we spent a bit of work over the last 3 weeks sort of shoring up our emergency procedures for this season. So what exactly are we going to do if there's a park on fire, if there's an emergency, how we're going to deal with that if it happens on the weekend, that sort of thing, as well as collaboration with Camus because we do work so closely with them. So we are in really good shape going into the season. There's more information that we can share broadly with other groups across BC Parks that we're going to be doing in the coming days and week with that. We also have a survey that we are working on for the Skyview Park that we are going to be published shortly here. And we were able to come up with some good questions and collaborated across rec services and the capital program on that. So we have that survey in development, which is great. Also, a hot topic in terms of policy is refunds. So this is sort of an emerging need for our team. It's been a major issue that came up during COVID as well. It's something that we want to tackle because the refund policies are a little bit out of date and could use a review. And so we're working on our team to do some pretty intense monitoring over this season to inform recommendations that we will be developing for improving those policies as we go forward. And then the last stream of work is sort of communications and outreach. And I did add issues management to the end of this because there was, of course, a couple of issues that came up over the last 3 weeks that took a decent amount of our time. So we had a couple issues that we worked through with Birkenhead Provincial Park as well as Lake Else Provincial Park. Not too much to update there, just a bit of a high level reservable ratio, as well as we had a couple double bookings through Lake Else that we were working through. That took a decent amount of time, like I said. Also, we've been smoothing the process with PO payments. There was a couple delays related to fiscal year end that we're working really hard to align our processes both with CSNR Financial Services as well as on the Camus side. So in the reservation services, it's a bit in the middle, sort of managing the processes. So we're doing everything that we can as the person in the middle, trying to shore up with CSNR and Camus. So that's sort of what our last 3 weeks looked like. In the absence of doing sort of a full demo this sprint, I'm going to talk a little bit about our backlog work with Camus. And so we have a wide variety of tickets that we're working through, but I did want to highlight just 2 in today's presentation. So BC 848, which is a long weekend calendar view issue. We're able to tackle this one, which was a big win for our team over the last 3 weeks. And it was called a hot fix because we wanted to prioritize it sort of above all of the others. So when we launched, we got a lot of feedback sort of on social media, as well as from park operators and other stakeholders that this long weekend view issue needed to be fixed for Canada Day long weekend. So we're able to work that in. So we backported it in Camus's development cycle and got it fixed last week. So this is just sort what the image on the screen is showing. Previous to the fix, we had exclamation parts showing instead of these X's, so it just caused a ton of confusion for users. And we're really happy to see that sorted out for upcoming long weekends this season. We do also have additional work that we're doing on this specific issue that's moving forward into the rest of the summer, which is great. And the other one that I wanted to highlight today is BC 216. So this is permit batch reporting, which is a huge priority for park operators. And so the tickets that we have prioritized coming up are a lot of park operator priorities as we're going into the May long weekend and their season is heating up. This one is a huge value for park operators, the inability to batch these permit reports. Is very onerous and expensive for park operators because they have to do it manually. Once this issue is resolved, it'll be able to be automated, which is excellent. And I did just want to highlight these two issues because it shows an interesting summary of what our team does. So we have the very front-facing hotfix calendar view issue, as well we have the back-end sort of PO priority that's important for them to be able to do their operations within park. So it's an interesting way to highlight that our team really has a lot of different kind of priorities and important issues that we need to fix for front end and sort of that back end of Canvas for park operators. Lastly, I did kind of want to highlight ongoing prioritization work, sort of theme of the day with Canvas, and we're developing sort of a series of principles for how we prioritize the work through the variety of stakeholders that we interact with, and we're looking forward to sharing that sort of as we go forward and as the work progresses. So definitely implementing some new processes and making sure we have that well in hand so that as we move throughout this season and we get a ton of information, a ton of feedback from social media, we can incrementally improve the product in a way that makes sense in sort of a principle-based format, which will be great. Okay, so moving on from a bit of Canvas information, just wanted to share a little bit about what's coming up for reservation services, again, throughout those three streams. So in the next couple of weeks, like I said, we're going to be working on those principles for prioritization. Looking forward to sharing that when that work is completed. We're also going to focusing on that permit batch reporting ticket and looking forward to doing some user testing with park operators to make sure it's fitting their needs. So we'll be able to share an update on that. On the policy side of things, finalizing the policy and procedure manual, which is great. Launching that Skyview survey for May long weekend. I should have mentioned too that users or campers are going to be able to access that survey through a QR code, which will be a really interesting test of sort of how that works in park. So that should be some good information coming out of that. As well, we're hoping to initiate some user experience research on reservation policies overall. So we have some work to do on our end on making sure we have some sort of explicit needs that we want to do so it's not too overwhelming, and developing some sort of questions and tactics on how we do this research. But we're hoping to focus on refunds as well as no-show policies because these are hot topics going into the season. And while our team is doing sort of some of that research analytical policy work, we want to be able to have that sort of evidence-based information on our side as well to inform any recommendations that we have going forward. So looking forward to that. And lastly, on the communications and outreach front, we're doing a lot of work around park operator communications, making sure that we're batching requests that are coming in through the Discover Camping inbox in a way that makes the most sense. As well, we're making sure we have some really good consistency with recreation services, who also does a lot of communications out to park operators. So making sure we're all aligned there and that the communications going out are the best that they can be, basically. We're also looking forward to having a Q&A session for park operators coming up. So we've had a number of training sessions to date on the Canvas system, which are available recorded on the extranet. But we do know that there's sort of an ongoing need for these Q&A sessions. So we're going to schedule one of those in the near future. So that is a quick and dirty of what we have coming up. Definitely looking forward to in the future demoing more progress as we make it. But for now, that's a bit of our update. Does anyone have any questions or feedback on that onslaught of information? Ruben, go ahead.
We'll call it feedback. Thank you so much for that. Darce, for picking up the mantle of presenting this and what you've done and what you're going to do, and to your whole team as well. I know that this is a shift, but kind of back to where I started, like knowing the amount that your team has on its plate, which probably borders every day on overwhelming, like that key and like primary tenet of incremental or agile delivery is that the more work in progress you have, the less throughput you have. And so seeing and celebrating that process of prioritization, I'm really bullish on it, of course, and I'm happy to see it, and I know it's going to pay dividends. So thank you to you all for picking up this mantle.
Thanks for that, Ruben. That's awesome.
I think we're on to Leah, your team.
Awesome. Thank you, Jess.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be here with everybody. I'm looking forward to showing you some of the things that we've got in place. Given it's, like Darcy, our first time sort of joining this meeting in this way, it'll be a little bit more of just a review of where we're at, and then moving forward into future meetings, we'll hope to actually demo some of the things that we're building out, in particular the staff portal, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So let me just get my screen set up here. They're in the opposite format to when I'm at home, so it takes me a second to get reoriented to what I'm sharing, make sure it's all appropriate. Okay, so first I want to start off with the bcparks.ca visitation stats. As we've sort of shifted the priorities with our teams between Darcy and I, my team is now primarily in charge of the bcparks.ca website, as well as our other information channels. But for the most part, I will focus today on things related to bcparks.ca or beta.bcparks.ca. This screen here is starting off to show you the visitation numbers we've seen on our beta website. You will see a couple of spikes, not surprisingly. Please ignore the top player numbers. But underneath, you'll see around March 15th and then around March 21st spikes. Those match when we first launched the reservation system to the public for use, and then around the May long weekend. And that just goes back to the sort of consistent feedback we're hearing that people are not quite distinguishing the difference between our bcparks.ca sites and reservations. So that feeds into our ongoing desires to sort of bridge those two that little bit more as well. You'll see, obviously, after the visitation has dropped off quite significantly, anecdotally, that's likely because people now know where to go to camping directly, so they can bypass or visit through the legacy website. But we are keeping in mind that it's kind of losing steam a little bit in terms of new visitor interaction. We have a really heavy user base to pull from to get consistent feedback, but we would like to keep this on people's radar. And so part of that will be to continue building out our content and new features for people to actually engage with. And we'll be looking to get back on people's radar a little more as we progress into the summer. Moving on a little bit, for this past 2 weeks and probably the next 2 to 4 weeks, in terms of system development, this is sort of behind the scenes of the website, but of particular focus as we get ready for peak season and emergency management is the improvement of our BC Park staff portal. This is not something we've released to staff yet. We did get some initial feedback last summer, but we haven't obviously released it just due to other priorities changing. But we are really hoping to get this into regions' hands this summer, so folks can start to use it for emergencies. What this portal essentially does is give people a non-coding way to provide web updates after hours. So our web team will continue to be present. They'll always be a source of providing web updates, but should it be a Saturday afternoon and they can't get a hold of someone right away, but we need an emergency web update, this portal will allow approved staff to go in and actually make those updates. I'm going to quickly log in really quickly just to show you. It is accessible via IDER just because currently we only plan to release it to BC Park staff. Of course, if that changes in the future, we can address broadening that out beyond IDER. There are a few interface issues or desires that we'll be working on over the next few weeks, including additional filter options. But I just want to see you just just show you at least overall, this is currently the however many we have. I can't see because of the screen here. We have 884 advisories in place right now. Those are primarily on the legacy website because the beta site isn't filled out yet, but this is a place where they're all here. Again, like I mentioned, over the next few sprints, we'll be increasing the sort of user friendliness of the filtering options to make it so, you know, if somebody from the Kootenays is logging in, they don't need to see everybody's updates. They may just want to see their own. So we'll be focusing on that. And that's part of engaging with the staff to make it more user friendly as well. But I do just want to really quickly show, this is what staff will see to create what, you know, a web update for an advisory or an alert on a park page. I won't go through and create one because we're running a little low on time, but I just want to show you like everything is the data and select field. So it's very much drop down oriented. You can click your park. You can make advisories by your section, region, or fire center, which is particularly valuable during emergencies. No coding is required. So this is very much just like another system that folks can use and interact with. And so I just wanted to show you that just so when folks listening in even maybe later can see that the intention is to make this not an additional thing for people to learn, but really to streamline some of the work that they have to do and without having to make everybody a web developer. So we're excited about that. I will now show you a couple of really quick things just on the content side that we continue to do for the beta website. Obviously, some pages are still being developed, but what I do want to show you is some of the URL cleanup that we've been doing for some of the pages that are built out. It's probably really tiny on your screen, but if you can see the URL up in the top here, this is an example of one that hasn't been changed. It's quite long, it's a little unwieldy, there's hyphens, and we really want to make things as streamlined as possible so that they're really shareable and usable. In particular, you know, for various print materials or on the call center for recordings. It would take you half an hour to say this. We would like to make that a little easier. And so an example are things like keeping it simple to what the page is about. So this one is .ca/volunteers, or again, not built out yet, but /volunteers/awards. So keeping them super consistent and as short as possible. Another example here with the reservation page, so the main site being /reserve and then /reserve/group. So again, it's one of those like small intricate details that may not provide a ton of value on the surface, but make them a little bit more usable for people along the way. In addition to that, we continue to create new pages on the website. We are building out the park pages slowly but surely. Obviously, there's 1,036 to create, so we're certainly looking for efficiencies over time to automate this process. Right now, it's still a little bit more manual than we'd prefer, but we do have a number built out here. Of particular note, I'll show you just really quickly Birkenhead Lake, because I didn't know how beautiful this park was, so it speaks to the value of having really beautiful pictures. You'll see that it's a little bit more engaging to look at, a little bit more simple to find the information. You can click down to exactly what you need to find. It's a little bit faster than our current website. We are also working on building out actual web content and new pages. So we worked really closely with Bex and her team on the Get Involved page, Get Involved section, pardon me. And an example here is just how we've redesigned some pages and streamlined the content. You see here, it's a quick couple of scrolls down to the bottom. Or on the legacy page, there's the landing page plus 5 new additional pages, and each one either links to external sites or is its own full page as well. So we're really trying to streamline things down, make them as simple as possible. And in addition to that, really quickly, because we're at time, I just want to show you one last page. Not only are we porting over some existing content just to build it out, we're also trying to rewrite the content as well. So the backcountry permit page is another example of one that we have done, again, streamlining it, making it a little bit more user-friendly. To do that, behind the scenes, and I'll get into this more next time, we have built out a draft web content strategy and a writing guide. Both of these are still very draft, so they'll be, you know, sent for approvals and engagement and feedback from staff. But want you to know for awareness that these are coming up and will help hopefully fuel some of the work that we have going on. We're at time, so I'll stop there. flip it back to Jess. And then in the next couple of weeks, we'll look forward to demoing perhaps the creation of a staff advisory through the portal so you can see it go in real time. So look for that in the next sprint or two.
Awesome, thanks, Leah. I think that's kind of it. I didn't have much more to go on after that. So thanks everybody for attending our combined sprint review today, and looking forward to kind of continuing this sort of group sprint review in the future. And yeah, again, open to feedback. If anybody has feedback on the content of the sprint review or any like process stuff, like if it was good, if it was enjoyable for people to see all three of us present, let us know.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, everybody. Leah, if I may just like take 30 seconds, like apropos the thing I put in the chat. Your team is working so hard to make a beautiful and seamless user experience. And so, you know, to your point around URLs, like sure, it might seem like, I don't know what the term you use, but like it matters. And it's all about creating that, you know, like that meaningful, seamless experience. So thank you to you and the team. Gotta say, like one thing you didn't mention, you know, like your team's doing is like you're just killing it on socials and collaboration with Beck's team, and just like building like such a strong and connected narrative. Love seeing the community building that's going on there, connecting with like BC Adventure Smart and outdoor rec teams and like the resharing. So beautiful, like wonderful work. And then if I can, for any of the park operators that have made it to this part of the recording, in terms of opportunity for asynchronous feedback, we'll share that and a mechanism to reach back out to us to let us know. But yeah, thanks everybody for being here and for adapting this way of working. It's so gratifying to see it come into light and all the incredible things you're doing.
Great.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Till soon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.